Hey man, what do you say we go out in the garage and get lit? Woo! Well, apparently we're already out in the garage, and we're not quite ready to get lit just yet because I need to get some bottles swapped around first. So the plan is I've got 2 or 3 old front axle assemblies that I want to get disassembled, you know, save the wishbone, the perch pins, spindles, and all that good stuff off of them. In order to do that, we need a torch. Now, I've been using these little tiny bottles because I'm a giant cheap ass and didn't feel like buying the big ones. And the problem with these is that every time I go to use them, they're empty or close to it, and I can't get a job completely done. So I finally went out in the backyard and dug up a coffee can and upgraded to some bigger cylinders. So we're gonna get those swapped out onto here. Those should be plenty big enough now that I can actually get some stuff done and not have to keep swapping the bottles out. Well, that's not fun. You suck. Huh. Well, that's not cool. Apparently I did not measure that. Alright. Well. Not even close. Well, that sucks. Well, I guess we're gonna do a little modification. So I was thinking I might be able to bend that, but it's quite a bit thicker than I was thinking it was, so that's not going to happen. Luckily, it's only welded in a couple spots and it's not really welded all that well. So I think it's going to be easier to cut the welds. I'll bring this out a little bit, just weld it back on, it'll be fine. I got the fan going, so it may be a little bit loud, but the issue I'm running into is I can't get in here really with a cutoff to be able to knock those welds off. I'm going to try to get in here with a hacksaw blade and hopefully get them enough that I can chisel this off. The front weld's through. There shouldn't be much holding on. There's barely anything to weld over there. So. Alright, I got that off and cleaned up. I put up a lot more of a fight than I was expecting. It wasn't welded much, it was just a small bead there and here, but definitely had pretty good penetration because it took a while to get through that. But it's off now. I'm going to grab the acetylene bottle and just see where that wants to sit. That's bigger than the oxygen bottle, so that'll be the kind of the determining factor as to how far I want to go out with this thing. And then we'll just throw a couple beads on this thing. Be somewhere in there probably, and that'll be plenty good enough for this. Alright, that's fairly well welded up. Not the prettiest, but it'll work. I'll let this thing cool off. And we'll get the rest of it assembled. Alright, I think we got it pretty well squared away here. Everything seems to fit pretty well. Hasn't fallen off yet. Got it strapped on, everything hooked up. I'm going to fire it up real quick, make sure there's no leaks, and after that we should be ready to get to work. Couldn't find a spray bottle, so I'm going to do this the old-fashioned way, just to set a little water on there. A little soapy water, make sure nothing's leaking. The last bottle I had, the small acetylene one, was actually leaking up through the stem, so that was a little sketchy, so hopefully that's not the case with this one. Yep, there we go. Awesome. First up is this axle. I believe this is a 37 to 41, something like that. Somewhere in there. Usually the kingpins will come out of these if they've been used somewhere recently. This thing's obviously been sitting around a while. And while the spindles do move, which is a good start, the kingpins are still frozen into the axle. I tried smacking on the other one there a little bit and it wouldn't budge, so before I mushroom it all to hell, I'm going to put some heat to the axle and hopefully be able to drive them out of there. I did get the nuts to loosen up on the perch pins, which is a good start. Those things are usually an absolute bitch to get out of there. It takes a lot of heat. Once in a while you can get lucky if they weren't tightened up a whole lot. You can sometimes get them out with a propane torch or matte gas torch. These I'm sure are not going to happen, so I'm not even going to bother with that. I'm going to take the acetylene to it. You can see that one I've already started trying to drive that out and it wouldn't even budge. So we're going to get these good and hot, hopefully be able to get the kingpins out, and with any luck we'll be able to get that out. I don't know if the axle's any good. I'm going to try to save the wishbone though. That seems pretty straight. The end of it's probably not any good, but we can cut it and make some split wishbones out of it. So, and I'll try to save the spindles, although I don't know why I even bother doing this anymore. The price of parts like those spindles has gone down a lot, and the price of acetylene has gone up a lot. So I probably end up spending more in fuel trying to get this thing apart than what these parts are worth. But it is what it is. I don't really want to throw it away, so we'll save what we can out of it, hope for the best. Well, I got the big compressor all charged up, so we should be ready to go. I'll get these things set up. Hopefully we'll be able to get this thing apart. I can already say this was not worth it. Well, that's probably the worst set of kingpins I've ever had to mess with. But got them both off. Hopefully the spindles are savable. It'd be a giant waste of time if they weren't. I'm going to jump onto the perch pins now. These things, sometimes you have to heat the nut to get it off too. These actually came off okay. Nice thing about these, they've got this little divot in the middle, so once you get the axle good and hot, you can put your air chisel right into that and drive down with it. And I probably should have done that with the kingpins. If you've got kingpins that are really stuck, you can do the same thing. You can kind of drill a little divot in the middle. That way it'll hold your bit from trying to walk off of it. Alright, I'll get these heated up and hopefully they come out. Well, here's what happened with this side. We weren't saving this one. The end of it ended up getting kind of mushroomed. And at that point, it's junk, so you might as well just cut your losses on it. So I ended up driving it out with this guy here, the old BFH. And obviously that just mushroomed the end of it even more, but we got it moving anyways, because the thing would just not budge. Even with a ton of heat, air hammer on it, it just wouldn't budge. So I got it out far enough to get the taper out, and right here I just cut the end of it off where the taper was. So I'm going to try to drive it. The nut would have been down here, so this is where the head of that was. Right there would have sat right here. I just cut it off with the Sawzall once it was out far enough, and I'll drive it back out that way since that end of it is all mushroomed. So obviously you're not saving that, but we should be able to save the wishbone. I don't know if the axle's any good or not. It's probably bent, they usually are, but I'll take a look at it and maybe we can save that. But we're still on axle number 1. I think there's 2 more to go, so should be a good time. Well, as you just saw, I fought with these cotter pins and did manage to get them out. I didn't explain what I was doing while I was doing it, which I probably should have, would have made it easier. But I'll give you a quick rundown as to how I get these out. Now, obviously, if they're super rotted away, you're not going to be able to get them out. Sometimes they're loose and you can just pull them out. Most of the time they're like this, where they're still fairly intact, but they're still really, really rusty, and they get stuck inside the perch pin there. So instead of going in here with pliers and just trying to reef them out and breaking them off, and then getting stuck with the piece in here, if you're a little more patient and use some finesse, you can usually get them out in one piece. If you break them off in here, you have to get that out, or when you pull the nut off of there, you're going to ruin the threads on the end of the pin, and the pin will be junk. That little bit that sticks out will be enough for that to tear the threads off of that. So you need to get these out. If they do break off, you can get in here with a punch sometimes and get them out, or worst case, you can drill them out. So what I usually do, obviously your pin's in here like this. You want to get your end straightened out. I will grab it with usually a pair of vice grips and just try to wiggle it. Try to get it to move back and forth. If you can get it to twist, you're golden, then it'll come out. A lot of times it won't. If you can't get it to twist by doing that, next thing I'll do is I will take same vice grips and lock it onto this end, probably 1/4 of an inch or so out from the nut. Lock it on there like that, and then hit this with a hammer and try to drive it out. Sometimes that'll break it free. Once you get this head out, you can start spinning it back and forth and work the rust out of it, and then you'll be good. Both of these didn't work that way. So as you saw, I had to heat both of these. So I'll usually use a propane torch, that's plenty enough. You want to just get the pin hot. It's pretty easy because there's not much material here. So you get this good and hot, and what that does is it kind of breaks the bond between the rust and, or breaks the bond of the rust between this and the pin. So get it hot, let it cool off. As it's cooling, squirt some penetrating oil in there like I did, and let it cool off a little bit, and kind of try the same method over again, where you lock onto this and try to get it to rotate. If you're lucky enough to have a bunch of this head sticking out, which you usually don't, but if you do, you can grab both ends of this and try to get it to rotate, and usually you can at that point. So once you're able to get this thing to spin, just work it, put a little more penetrating oil to it, get it so it moves freely, and then you can, usually just pull it out. So cotter pins are all out. I try to get these off by hand, and they were not budging. Quite often you got to heat the nut to get it off. So that's what we're going to do right now. Put the torch to that, put the air gun to it. It should take it off, hopefully. Well, we got both nuts off. Came off not great, but they're off. So I imagine these pins are probably going to put up a pretty good fight. So I have to get that axle really hot to get these out probably. Hanging on fire. Surprisingly, I managed to get everything all apart. This is what we have left. Managed to save most of it. There was one perch pin that got sacrificed, but these axles actually look decent. I don't think they're bent. I gotta check them out a little bit better, but I think the top two there were 37 to 41s, I believe, are the same. And the bottom was just a Model A, but they don't look too bad. I think they were worth saving. Surprisingly, the Model A perch pins actually, I think, might be alright. There's the cotter pin is broken off in both of them, but it doesn't seem to hurt the threads too badly, and I think I may be able to at least, if not punch those out, maybe drill them out, but I think those will actually come out. We should be able to save those, which I'm quite surprised at, because I thought for sure that those would be gone. The nuts were so badly rusted that most of the hex was actually rotted off. So those are 37, 38 perch pins. One of them, the threads are destroyed. I don't know what happened with that. So that thing's going in the trash, but these other two, I believe, are salvageable, so we'll have at least one good set out of there. Set of round back spindles and 3 wishbones. One's Model A, the other two are 37 to 41s. The ball on that one is completely trash, so that's going to get split. This one isn't too bad. It'll probably get split anyway, but for now, I'll leave it together just in case. So that's it. As always, thank you guys for watching. Appreciate it. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe and shoot the video a like. It definitely helps me out. We'll catch you guys in the next one.